Imagine you have a perfect 850 credit score. You've never paid late. Not once. You keep your card usage around 7%. Everything is clean. Disciplined. Textbook perfect. On paper, you should be in the bank's highest tier. The gold customer. The one who gets the best offers and the lowest rates. But then a credit card offer shows up in your mailbox. And it says 29% APR. Like you did something wrong. If you're black in America, that isn't a wild story. It's a normal day. And here's what you need to understand. Banks have tiers. But what decides your tier is not only the score you can see. In this video, I'm going to break down the math banks don't want you staring at. From government reports, to federal settlements, to internal documents that slipped into the light. I'm also going to talk about algorithms, the new face of discrimination, quieter, harder to prove, and easier to deny. This is entertainment, not financial advice. But if you stay to the end, you'll understand how money gets pulled out of your pocket and what you can do to push back. First, you need to know what a truly strong credit profile looks like. Because banks love to act like it's complicated. It isn't. It's a scorecard built on simple habits. Pay on time. Keep your balances low, and don't look desperate for credit. If you have a $10,000 limit and you use less than $1,000, that's under 10% utilization. And banks read that as control. Add a mix of accounts. Maybe a credit card, a car loan, a mortgage, and accounts that have been open for years. And you signal stability in a fair system. That should place you in the top tier automatically. The best rates tier. That's the whole point of excellent credit. You're supposed to be rewarded for being low risk, but reality is colder. Some people do everything right and still get priced like they're risky. It's like being told you're in the top class, then being charged like you're sitting in the back row. In 2023, one major report analyzed over 650,000 credit card accounts. They didn't rely on feelings. They controlled for the things banks claim matter: credit score, income, debt levels, even location. In other words, they tried to make two borrowers look identical on paper. So the only differences left would be unfair ones. And the result is the part that should make you stop, even after controlling for all of that. Black cardholders still paid higher interest rates than white cardholders with the same financial profile, about 0.72 percentage points higher on average. That sounds small until you realize what it means. This is the unexplained gap, not tied to risk, not tied to behavior, not tied to the score, and the raw gap before controlling for anything was even larger, around 2.17 percentage points. That's not a rounding error. When a gap repeats across hundreds of thousands of people, it stops being an accident. It becomes a pattern.
Not an accident.
And in the next part, I'll show you exactly what a small gap costs in real dollars. Let's make it simple. Say you carry a $5,000 credit card balance and you make minimum payments. If you have excellent credit, you should be getting something like 20% APR. And over 5 years, that could mean roughly $2,900 in interest. But if your APR is 22.17%, closer to what black cardholders receive on average in the data, that same balance can cost about $3,184 in interest. That's $236 more for the same debt, with the same credit score, with the same behavior. And this is just one small balance. Many Americans carry around $11,000 in credit card debt, and they repeat this cycle for years, over a lifetime. A few hundred becomes a few thousand, extracted quietly, simply because you were placed in a lower tier you never chose. And if you think credit cards are bad, the real money sits somewhere heavier. Mortgages. Mortgages are where tiny differences turn into thousands. Fast. Some studies find Black and Latino borrowers pay slightly more than white borrowers with identical qualifications, by about 5.6 to 8.6 basis points. If that term sounds technical, Here's the plain version. 100 basis points equals 1%. So 8.6 basis points is a small slice of a percent, but small on paper doesn't stay small over 30 years. On a $300,000 mortgage at 6.5% over 30 years, you might pay about $382,000 in interest. At 6.58%, just a bit higher, you might pay about $387,000 in interest. That's roughly $4,500 more for the same house, with the same income, with the same credit score, because of an invisible tier difference. Some researchers describe this as a kind of tax, an extra cost that shows up in multiple small ways, adding up to around $165 a year. Invested over a typical homeownership period, that can become about $67,320 lost by retirement. The system doesn't need to take everything at once. It just needs to take a little, every year, for long enough. Next, we go to where this tier system becomes even more obvious. Auto loans. Now let's talk about car loans, because the tier system shows up clearly at the dealership table. A 2023 study found black borrowers often pay about 0.7 percentage points more than white borrowers, with comparable credit. And here's the part that's hard to ignore. The group paying more is also less likely to default. In plain language, they're statistically more reliable, yet they're charged more. On a $25,000 auto loan over 5 years, that 0.7% difference can mean about $465 in extra interest. And that's the mild version. At many dealerships, there's also dealer markup, an extra layer added on top, and it doesn't hit everyone equally. If you get hit with the maximum markup, the extra cost can climb to about $1,436. This isn't about how well you drive. It's about what tier you get assigned to before you even speak. And the next part gets colder, because testing shows that even when two people have the same profile, the person with better credit can still get the worst deal. Based on appearance alone, there's a way to test fairness without arguing. You send people in as testers. In these experiments, people of different races walk into the same places with identical credit profiles. And sometimes, the non-white tester even has better credit. The results are brutal. Many times, the non-white tester with the stronger profile still gets offered worse financing than a less qualified white tester. One number that stands out is around 62.5% of the time. More than half the time, the person with better credit got the worst deal because of how they looked. That tells you something important. Credit score doesn't always beat perception. And at this point you might say, okay, maybe it's just a few bad actors. A few racist employees. I would love that to be true, because it would mean the problem is small. But when you look at major federal settlements in recent years, you see it's not just individuals, it's systems, repeated behaviors, normalized inside organizations. Next, I'll walk you through what got exposed. Not rumors, not opinions, actual paper trails. Since 2021, the U.S. Department of Justice has run an initiative targeting discrimination in lending, and it has secured over $150 million in settlements. One mortgage company settled for about $24.4 million. And investigators didn't just find numbers. They found attitude, internal emails using slurs, and language describing minority neighborhoods as places not worth serving. Another bank settled for about $31 million. And investigators found they had opened exactly one branch in a minority neighborhood over 20 years. 1 in 2 decades. Then, there was a settlement over $175 million, where internal documents revealed employees using degrading terms for black customers, and labeling high-cost lending with language tied to ghetto stereotypes. In Chicago, there were cases where black borrowers paid nearly $3,000 more in fees for the same loan amount. This isn't ancient history. These are recent years, which means the tier system is still running. And you might think, so remove the humans, and the discrimination goes away. But the next part is where it gets disturbing. Even when humans step back, the gap can continue, because now it's wrapped in algorithms. Banks love to say computers are objective. No emotions. No bias. Just data. But computers learn from history. And if history is dirty, the machine learns dirt. A 2024 study tested AI systems in mortgage underwriting decisions. And the pattern was disturbing. The systems often recommended denying more loans to Black applicants and recommended higher interest rates. Even with similar profiles, some results showed white applicants were about 8 to 12% more likely to be approved overall. In one example, with a 640 credit score, white applicants were approved around 95% of the time, while Black applicants fell under 80%. Same score, different outcomes. How does that happen if race isn't allowed to be used? The answer is proxy variables, indirect signals like zip code. Because of decades of segregated housing, zip code can quietly stand in for race. The model may also look at school history, job type, and whether someone ever used high-cost lenders, which are more common in certain neighborhoods. The machine doesn't know it's discriminating. It's optimizing patterns from the past, and the past carries bias. That's what modern redlining looks like. Redlining used to mean drawing red lines on a map to block communities from fair loans. Now, it can look like a neural network making the same choices with cleaner language. Next, I'll take you back briefly, because this didn't appear out of nowhere. It was planted decades ago, and today it just wears a new mask. To understand why algorithms today remember what they're not allowed to say, you have to glance at history. In 1934, the U.S. government created a program meant to help Americans buy homes. A good idea on the surface. But during that era, rules and policies treated many Black neighborhoods as high risk, effectively keeping them away from low-cost credit. In plain terms, some people were invited into the elevator, and others were forced onto the stairs. For many years, most housing support and safer lending flowed into places labeled good, while many families of color were left outside the cheapest money. When one group gets to buy homes earlier with low rates, they don't just gain shelter. They gain an asset that rises in value over time. When another group is forced to rent longer, they pay for the present, but build less for the future. So the tier system doesn't only live inside a bank. It lives inside inheritance. Then came the 2008 financial crisis, and it widened old cracks. Many communities of color were steered toward worse loans more likely to collapse. And when the market broke, wealth evaporated faster. There were periods where Black household wealth dropped far more sharply than white household wealth. The same storm. But different houses, one was built from concrete, the other from wood. After the storm, one group rebuilt faster, and the other spent years just trying to stand up again. And this is how tiers become baked into everyday life without anyone shouting discrimination. A group gets charged slightly more, denied refinancing slightly more, pushed into pricier products slightly more. For long enough, compounding turns slightly into massive. When you compare the wealth of two families decades later, it can look like personal choices, but sometimes it's the door that was different from the start. So what do you do in a game with tiers? When the real ranking system is hidden, first, you never treat the first offer as destiny. You ask for another quote, then another. You compare. You shop multiple lenders, because every extra quote weakens the leverage of the person sitting across from you. Negotiation isn't just about confidence. It's about information. Second, consider credit unions and member-owned institutions, because research often shows they discriminate less than traditional banks. Not zero, but less. And if you're denied, you have the right to ask why in writing. Paper is power, because it turns vague feelings into clear facts. If something looks off, Save everything. Emails, documents, dates, because systems survive when people stay silent. Next is the most important shift of all. Reduce how often you need a bank's permission. Because the less you need to borrow, the fewer chances they have to rank you lower. You can't rebuild the entire system overnight, but you can change how much the system touches your life. When you build wealth through steady investing, growing your skills, creating extra income streams, and stacking savings over time, you rely less on borrowing just to survive. And the less you need debt, the less that tier tax can cling to you, because they can only extract when you need them. One more thing matters. Talk about numbers. Share the rates you're offered. Share your experiences. Because the system survives when people don't compare notes. Once people start comparing, patterns become visible. And visible patterns can be fought. I'm Miles, and this channel is new, so I genuinely appreciate every single subscription. If this video helped you understand why a perfect score still isn't always enough, please subscribe to support the channel so I can keep publishing clear, useful money breakdowns consistently. Drop a comment with your own experience, or just tell me what tier you feel you're being treated like you're in. Thanks for watching all the way through, and I'll see you in the next video.